Hey, how's it going? Today I got another book review coming in. We got True Hallucinations by Terence McKenna. He's kind of huge academic advocate for psychedelics and psychedelic research. Starting kind of in the 1970s, going until his death in 2000. I've talked to him about him a couple times. This was in my favorite reads of 2020. But this is probably my new favorite nonfiction book, and and this is why you should probably read it if you're interested in psychedelics or the mystical or anything like that. Now for this book, if you don't know anything about psychedelics or anything like that, or if you've never even experienced taking any, I feel like this would be kind of a hard book to understand or relate to, because it's one of those things that can't really explain what it's like to experience psychedelics. He does a really good job with that, but it's one of those things that it's a very non-verbal experience, and it's something that can't really be explained verbally. But I've been kind of in the world of psychedelics for like 7 years now, so I've had plenty of experience in this world, and I read Terence McKenna like 6 years ago for Food of the Gods, which is his more academic, researched type of book. He talks about all drugs like sugar, caffeine, psychedelics, psilocybin mushrooms, all of that, and the history of it and how it affects human consciousness and just us as a species, and how it has to do with religion and just kind of everything. He was interested in all subjects, but he was mainly an ethnobotanist and an entomologist. He was super interested in just plants and insects. And same with his brother. His brother, Dennis McKenna, was also on Joe Rogan. So if you want to look up his interview, it's really interesting. I've been meaning to rewatch it. I don't think I've seen all of it, but he's still alive, doing the same research and advocating for the same things that his brother was. And he's actually in this book as well. But a little bit more about Terence McKenna. He was really into shamanism, metaphysics, alchemy, language, philosophy, culture, technology, environmentalism, and for the most part, the theoretical origins of human consciousness. And like I said, he's a huge advocate and academic for psychedelics in general. And if you're interested in the subject, he's a good place to start. He was one of my first kind of psychedelic reads with Food of the Gods. But yeah, so a little bit about this. Wait, I didn't even put, when was it published? It was published in 1993. And this took place in 1975, though. It's kind of like a travel log. It's about him and his brother and 3 other people going to the Amazon, and he was attending Berkeley in the late 1960s and decided to leave in 1969. I can't really remember why, but the government was after him. It definitely had to do something with drugs. So between the political revolutions happening in California, in Berkeley and San Francisco and stuff like that in 1969, and between the government looking for him, he decided to leave the country and use this time to go to the Amazon and explore some of his fascinations, and hopefully coming to some conclusions about what he thought about psychedelics. And it's kind of weird to think about that I'd taken more psychedelics than he had by the time he was 25. He kind of got into it later. But but yeah, so by the time he was like 24, 25, he was wanting to look for this peyote-like drug in the Amazon, and decided to make a trip out of it. but uh, but yeah, so it's mainly about these five people. Two of them are girls, three of them are guys, and like I said, Dennis and Terrence are brothers. And then there's two other ones, a girl and a guy. I can't really remember all their names now, but they're kind of like the more scientific, like skeptical ones that help kind of balance the views. Because Terrence and Dennis kind of like run away with their imagination and are just taking like an obscene amount of mushrooms that they're finding, because psychedelic mushrooms, psilocybin, can grow in just poop and like cow feces and human feces. So as they were traveling around in the Amazon, they were literally finding like fresh magic mushrooms just growing, and so they're just like cutting them all down and bagging them up and just like taking obscene amounts of them and trying to push psychedelic vision and see what all they can find out, because if you've taken psychedelics, then you've probably come to some sort of an epiphany or some sort of spiritual experience, and at the very least, a change in perspective in almost all things. And so they had come to those conclusions, taking LSD and other psychedelics, and but mainly just mushrooms and LSD in uh, Berkeley, and they're really interested in them, and they wanted to push it as far as it could go. And this is about that experience. And some of it does seem far-fetched, and probably is, and even McKenna doesn't really have any explanations to some of the experiences he's had. Um, the amount of drugs they were taking in such a short amount of time, and the environment they were in. Who knows what was real and what wasn't. But for one thing, for sure, this is a very interesting read. So, I love this cover. It's beautiful. But I'm going to read you a couple of passages to give you kind of sense of what you're getting yourself into if you're interested in this. Starting off, we got from page 84. It became possible for a moment to dream that the powers of shamanism, derived from millennium-old knowledge of microphysics and bioelectronics, was far in advance of our own. The doorway that seemed to swing open was a doorway out of historical time, back towards some sort of archaic completion nearly forgotten. Perhaps the shamanic traditions of this planet are the keepers of the understanding that uses that uses the human body, brain, mind as its vehicle, leaving the present state of the art, which our own scientific method has achieved, a very poor second. And then page 113. We have the understanding bloomed in my mind that we are all enlightened beings, and that only our inability to see and feel ourselves and others as we really are keeps us from shedding our guilt and experiencing ourselves as truly enlightened. I have never been a psychedelic bliss bunny, yet there I was, suspended somewhere between cliche and archetype. And then the last one, if you're still with me, 157. We were among the first to achieve contact with this other species. It was the real thing. We had come to the equatorial jungle to explore the dimensions glimpsed in a tryptamine ecstasy, and there, in the darkness of the heart of the Amazon, we had been found and touched by this bizarre and ancient life form that was now awakening to the global potential of a symbiotic relationship with technical humanity. All night long, strange vistas and insights poured through me. I saw gigantic machineries and worlds of vegetable and mechanical forms on scales inconceivably vast. Time, agatized and glittering, seemed to pour by me like living superfluids inhabiting dream regions of terrible pressure and supercold. And I saw the plan, the mighty plan, at last. It was an ecstasy, an ecstasis that lasted hours and placed the seal of completion on all of my previous life. At the end, I felt reborn, but as what I knew not. So, yeah, it's some crazy stuff. So, if you're interested in psychedelics and want to get into it more and the history of it and everything, I cannot suggest Terence McKenna enough. I definitely want to read more of his stuff, but I've already read his two most accessible and both intellectually and physically ones. So I'll have to do some digging to find his other stuff. But if you're interested more in this stuff, I suggest a book called Trip by Tao Lin. He kind of does a good job of summarizing a lot of Terence's work because he's read all of it, and he's kind of the reason why I decided to get back into Terence. But if you're new to all this stuff, I definitely suggest that book first to give you some perspective and warming up. So thanks for hanging in with me. Until next time, peace.